This song was written by myself and Rachel Irwin, with Rachel taking the responsibility for vocal recordings and lyricism, while I took care of the arrangement and guitar recordings. There was obviously some overlap within our roles, with Rachel suggesting certain parts of the arrangement while I contributed some of the lyrics. But for the most part, our roles within the writing, composing, arranging, and recording processes were fairly well defined. Let Me Go is a song protesting the act of slavery and is presented from two perspectives, one of a slave and the other of a son whose father has just been taken away to become a slave. When arranging this song, I felt that the lyrics were what really needed to shine, and because of this, the guitar parts are fairly minimal, just basic chords and arpeggios. The subject matter of the song is so heavy that to overcomplicate the arrangement would have felt somewhat superficial, as if the ego of the composer is more important than the issue at hand. Because of the nature of the subject matter, I decided to keep the tempo fairly slow, 85 beats per minute, to allow the listener to focus on the words being sung rather than rushing through them. I don't think that this is a song that you could dance to necessarily, but rather is one that you could stop and think about in terms of the bigger issue it discusses. Ideally, I would like for this song to provoke an emotional response from listeners and maybe even inspire some form of activism or charity. In terms of structure, Let Me Go is just a pretty standard pop song. It's basically verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, with an intro and outro at either end and a little interlude before the second verse to give a slight break from the vocal and to give some space for the guitar to take over, but only briefly. The verses are fairly sparse in texture, just acoustic guitar and vocals for the most part. Though there are a few arpeggios played by the electric guitar in places, I feel their presence is largely unobtrusive and so allows the vocal to take centre stage. The choruses are a little busier, particularly the fifth and sixth bars, which feature a vocal line with more syllables than the previous bars, and an electric guitar part that outlines the three chords being played, whilst also implying some suspensions. The bridge is a sort of release, a little more polyphonic in texture, with its layers of guitars, synth pads, and vocal harmonies. It feels like a space to breathe. It's uplifting and a little louder than the rest of the song, which remains fairly static dynamically. I'm pleased with the arrangement of the bridge more than any other section, and I particularly enjoyed making sure that the synth pads and the vocal harmonies both complemented one another. The vocal melody is sung in a fairly narrow range, drawing its parts from the B flat natural minor scale and sticking within the range of one octave. Without realizing it, we chose a key for this song that is traditionally associated with dark or somber subjects. In 1722, Rameau characterizes B flat minor as mournful, and Charpentier in 1692 labels it as gloomy and terrible. Harmonically, this song doesn't stray anywhere away from its diatonic roots, and refrains from using extended chords aside from the occasional major or minor seventh. The basic lyrical strategy taken in this song was to explain the situation within the verses and to then react to it in the choruses. The first two lines, I live to serve, I serve to live, are a sort of lyrical repetition that underlines the futility of life as a slave. The chorus uses a different kind of lyrical repetition. The entire phrase, let me go, is repeated 3 times in each chorus, which I feel accentuates the longing of slaves to be free from their masters and to return home. There are things I would do differently, however, if I revisit this song. Firstly, I would make sure the arrangement and planning are done well in advance to give time to not only revise existing parts and change them if necessary, but also to reduce the pressure of mastering at such short notice. As of this song, Rachel and I left starting the work on it far too late, and as such this isn't our finest work. As far as the arrangement itself is concerned, I would use a more varied range of guitar textures, possibly add more synth pads and or a string section. I would potentially change some of the chord structure and focus on bringing out the lyrics more so than they are now. I would also add vocal harmonies for the chorus, as well as adding background vocals during the second verse. I changed the acoustic guitar part for certain. Upon listening back, I realised that the dull rhythm that doesn't really change for the entire song is something I'm not a huge fan of. But as I mentioned, we started this far too late for me to be able to fix that. Finally, I'd like to really dig into the arrangement process and make sure I'm confident that every part in this song is there for a reason and does the job the way it should, rather than being unnecessary and functionless.